Hi, everyone. This is Coach Joe Beckerly here to explain training zones and how we use them in your training cycles, your annual training plan, and when you're training for specific events. So, what training zones are is they're the intensity that you're training during a specific workout. So, we have some workouts that are in the lower zones, 1 and 2, and then we have workouts that are in the higher zones of 4 and 5. And you can look at this zone chart, which you have access to, and you'll see right here, we have the training zones 1 through 5. And then we have how that feels, easy, steady, moderate, hard, hard, very hard, percent of heart rate max, percent of heart rate reserve, beats below maximum heart rate, and then RPE from a scale of 1 to 10, RPE from a scale to 6 to 20. Then the primary energy system that's being used. So you can see in these lower zones, you're mostly using aerobic through zone 1 through 4, and then you get into the anaerobic on the zone 5. And then also, this is pretty cool. You have the fuel use, so the carbs versus fat. So you can see when you're in the lower aerobic zones, you're using less carbs, more fat. Whereas when you're in the higher zones, you're using more carbs and then fat. So that's the importance of including carbohydrates when you want to run or compete in triathlon at a race pace, because you are using more carbs when you're running at a higher intensity. Whereas if you're doing a slow walk or jog, you can stay in that fat burning zone. So that's the top here. And then down below here, you have a lot of the same data, the RPEs, but then we have the swim pace for triathletes. This is based on your 100-yard or 100-meter swim pace. You have the percent of threshold, and then for cyclists, the FTP bike power, as well as run VO2 max, run pace, percent of threshold for the run, and then again, the energy system and carbs and fats that are being burned. So let's dive into the zones for 1 through 5. So no matter if you're training just specific for running or a triathlon, zone 1 is easy. Zone 2 is light aerobic. This is what we call a steady state. We use this to build your endurance base. A lot of your long runs, your long cycling, your long swims are at the zone 2 pace. Once we get into zone 3, it's moderate aerobic. It feels moderately hard. And then you have your zone 4, which is threshold, which is a hard pace. Zone 3 and 4 is typically what we do race in. So those feel like a race pace, like you're racing. And then we have zone 5, which is above threshold. And zone 5 is a very hard effort, very hard intensity. So it's a pretty easy one to know. It's an all-out sprint. It's when we're doing hill repeats or short sprint, short speed workout that's lasting from 30 seconds to 2 minutes max. And then you can correlate those to your heart rate max if you're using a heart rate as your measurement for your intensity. And then just remember, heart rate and rate perceived exertion are responses to work. So they're a response to how you're feeling during your training. And then if we go down here, you can dial into the RPEs 1 through 3, how it relates to your swim pace. If you're running for a triathlon, this would be your 100-meter pace on our 500 test that we do. And that is your threshold pace when we do that 500 test for your 100-meter. And then you can adjust your swim pace by 5 to 10 seconds when we get into those lower zones, or increasing the effort and the speed as we get to that zone 5. For the cyclists, when we're looking at power, this is exact measurement of work. So we do an FTP test. It's pretty much exact. We're looking at your percentages of your functional threshold test and correlating those into the zones. So you have the FTP power right here from 55% in that low zone 1, and then over 100% of your FTP test when we're in that zone 5. When you're looking at run pace, the zone 1's a very easy, it's a jog basically. Zone 2 is the light aerobic, that's your long run. If I was running with you, we should be able to hold a conversation the whole time. It's a rate of perceived exertion, 4 out of 5 of 10. Then, like I said, as we get into the zone 3 and the 4, you're getting closer to that marathon pace. You're at that race pace, that endurance race pace at the zone 3. And then zone 4 is more of the half marathon, 10K efforts where they're shorter races, so you can go at them with a bit higher intensity. And you can think about your threshold pace and running from the 6-mile run test we do. That's what we do, a 6-mile run test, because that's your threshold. So that's what a zone 4 feels like when you're racing a 6-mile time trial. And then pretty much all out effort would be a 5K or a 3K. You can't sustain it for very long. You're giving it everything you have there. And like I said, the lower zones are aerobic. So you think about zone 1 and 2 and even 3, we're working on building your aerobic base. Zone 4 and 5, we're working on improving your performance, making you a faster runner or a faster triathlete. And it's important that we use these different zones in your training, because we want to target the intensities. We want to make sure we're building towards the aerobic base, since these are endurance events, and also that you're performing at your best with some speed work and some higher intensity work. It also helps us ensure that you're recovering. If we were just to do threshold and above threshold efforts, you would burn out, you would overtrain, your body would shut down, you just couldn't sustain them through your annual training program. Whereas these lower zones, you can sustain much longer, and they help you build endurance base. And that's why a high majority of our training for endurance is in these lower zone 2s for our long runs. Lastly, just don't overthink the training zones. When you're looking at heart rate, rate of perceived exertion, there's a lot of variables to it. If it's hot out, it's going to feel harder, right? The rate of perceived exertion is going to be harder. Your heart rate's going to be higher. Even if you drink too much coffee or you don't have enough sleep, there's a lot of variables that go into how you're feeling during your training. That's because these are responses to work. So don't overthink it. Do your best to hit these zones, but really, if it feels easy, it feels like a steady pace, you're most likely in that zone 1 or 2 and hitting that target for those long runs. The higher ones, if it feels hard, if it feels like you're racing, right, you're going to be in that zone 3 or 4. And then, like I said, the zone 5, it's automatic. It's an all-out effort. So you always know when you're in the zone 5. And if you have any questions, definitely let me know, and we'll jump on a phone call and talk it out more. I recommend printing out this zone sheet and keeping it with your workout gear. So when you're looking at your training plan and they'll have the intensities, you can look it over and see what zone you're targeting for that workout. All right, have a great training.